So in full transparency,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's safe to say that nobody wants to face the reality that their marriage didn't work in the manner in which they hoped for. I think it's honestly safe to say that people who actually took their vows seriously, and you're listening right now, you feel me. That's not the plan. That wasn't the initial plan.
Yeah.
Regardless if it was the wisest choice to do, or even if you gave it your all. Because for most people, divorce, the word is a trigger, and it triggers a feeling of failure. Not to mention that it leaves people uncertain about their self-worth, whether or not if they are enough, which also raises questions about their adequacy, as well as concerns about the future trajectory of their lives going forward. Now, outside of that, divorce can also have a profound impact on a person's emotional state, which potentially leads to hardening the heart, which is what I like to refer it as, where the courage to pursue another relationship diminishes due to fear being the barrier, where isolation is often understood as protection in an attempt to avoid potential hurt. Or how about this? Getting into another relationship, but hesitant to fully invest in it. However, you deem this as being cautious. That's what you call it. You call it being cautious. However, you miss out on the opportunity of a deep connection. And when it comes to second marriages, studies indicate that second-time marriages often have a higher rate of divorce than first-time marriages. And when you hear those studies and statistical data, why would somebody even do it again, right? Why would somebody do it again? Or if they do it again, they may find themselves in similar situations, leaving them with the question, how could this happen again, right? And while it's impossible to completely avoid all circumstances, because I don't think everything is, you can't avoid everything. I firmly believe that our level of self-awareness significantly influences our choice of partnership and our overall presence in a relationship. The depth of our self-knowledge plays a crucial role in determining who we select as a mate. Furthermore, understanding ourselves deeply not only impacts our choice of partner, but it also influences how we present ourselves in the relationship. And so what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to talk about the second time around, right? Because for many of you who listen to this podcast, you've been divorced, and maybe you've also been divorced twice. I've had even clients who've been divorced 2 times. And I wanted to talk about the second time around. But I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to bring a guest on who's actually, I would definitely consider a good friend of mine. I did not meet him out here in these social media streets. I met Quest in these personal development streets. All right. Hey. I met Quest. I can't even introduce him. He already talking, right? But no, Quest is a great friend of mine. We met in 2017. We've spoke on a stage or 2 together, whether that's in person or virtual. Great guy. I've learned a lot from Quest. Like I tune in. Okay. And I needed to bring him on. And I thought he would be perfect to talk about this from a male's perspective. Yeah. And so Quest really does understand marriage. I believe that wholeheartedly. He was divorced previously, but he's now remarried. His story of past failures and realization of the absence of core values, which we will talk about, resonates with people who are experiencing the challenges that marriage can present when not properly equipped. Not only did Quest overcome his difficult past, he has since remarried and is currently the director of Thank God I'm Married at Eric Thomas and Associates. So if you all have heard of E.T. the Hip Hop Preacher, that is who he works for as well. And he's also the CEO of The Greenhouse, a company dedicated to seeing marriages grow and thrive. He currently lives in North Carolina with his wife, Faith, and their 3 children, Zoe, Nico, and Mason. And so without further ado, I am so glad, Quest, that you came with my last minute shenanigans. Y'all, I have been last minute with inviting people. But I'm telling you, I got some good people because everybody been like, yeah, I'll do it. So Quest, thank you for my last minute shenanigans because I text him last Thursday.
I ain't tripping. I know how life work, man. That's why I ain't tripping.
Yes, it does. Life has its way, but I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad we had this conversation. I have not brought Quest on this podcast. How dare that I haven't done that? And I mean, really, because Quest is great. I've learned a lot from Quest, just in terms of marriage. I'm always listening and just taking it all in. And so, Quest, thank you so much.
Man, first and foremost, thank you. Like, you learn from me, but I learn from you too. I promise you I do. This space that you are operating in, I was like, where was Tanya when I first got divorced? You know what I'm saying? I've seen you speak to a partner or two of mine after they've experienced divorce and have allowed them to really think things through. People don't think when men divorce, like, we feel stuff too. Whether we believe it was a marriage we should have been a part of or one we shouldn't have been a part of, we feel stuff. We deal with it differently because we don't do vulnerability too well. But like, for real, your work is, I can't even say needed, because that's like, that doesn't properly express the actual need in and of itself. So yeah, man, I love you and thank you so much for having the kid on. You know,
thank you so much, Quest.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I
You
really
said anniversary.
It.
Yeah, we just walked into 12. I just, you know what I'm saying? I just want to, yeah, we walked into 12 last week, June 4th. So yeah, man.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Look at that. Look at God. See, that's what I'm saying. And that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I wanted to talk about this second time around thing. But before we get into that, I kind of want to go back a little bit, just to your first marriage, because that helps paint the picture to where you are now in regards to your second marriage with Faith. And how long were you married the first time?
2 years.
Wow. Really?
2 years.
2 years. And so,
and this time 12.
right.
And we're still going. Lifetime
and you're
to go.
still going, and you still going. And what caused the end of it? What made you say, you know what, after 2 years that we couldn't keep compatible. This going? Okay. And what do you mean by compatible?
I think that we just had two different mindsets. In life, there are givers and there are takers, right? And I was a taker at one point, but you start to realize, because when you understand how important it is to grow as an individual, you stop becoming a taker, or you stop being a taker, I should say, and you start becoming a giver.
Yeah.
You and I believe in the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, right?
Absolutely.
And so there is a text that says it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. There's another text that says, give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over with good measure, right? And so I don't know if we really, we usually address those texts when we're talking about being a good steward of our funds in terms of tithe and offering. But it really is a principle, right? The Bible is so much more than what we think it is. It's a book of practices, policies, and principles. And so if that's a principle, how much am I giving as a parent? How much am I giving as a friend, as a brother, as a father, mother, whatever capacity you feel life in? And since we're talking within the context of marriage or relationship, how much am I giving? And so a lot of the times people don't understand that the institution of marriage is one of service. So if you come into this relationship expecting or thinking about what it can do for you rather than what you can do for it, you're at a loss already. You know what I'm saying? You are already at a loss. And I think for me, I thought about what I can get from the relationship. And it doesn't always mean like, so I know we're going to talk about core values later on, but I saw 36, 24, 38.
I laugh at that because I know what that is.
Right? I saw 40.
What are those numbers, Quest? Let the people know.
That is the female dimensions. I mean, this is a grown folk
Yeah, we gotta have it.
podcast.
Yeah.
So I was lips, hips, and fingertips. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? The roundness. You know what I'm saying? No shade to the slim or skinny women. No shade to y'all, but I love, you know what I'm saying, a little roundness, if you will.
Mhm.
And that was what I was focused on,
Mhm.
and not realizing that relationship was so much more than just what she looked like or how she looked on my arm or how good our sex was.
Mhm.
It's so much more than that. Um, it is the ability to build together, to, you know, even when we disagree. I'm a firm believer in the fact that it's not what happens to us in life, but how we respond to what happens to us in life. And if we
Mhm.
respond always out of our emotions and it's always a fight and screaming and art, yeah, it can just get real toxic when you make the foundation just that. You know what I'm saying? It's funny. Yo, you know what? Praise God. Tanya, it's so funny. There are 4 dimensions to intimacy, right? There's the physical, there's the social, there's the intellectual, and then there's the spiritual. And if we did it like in boxes, like your average person, like, tell the truth, if it's the truth and shame the devil, we always start with the physical. It's the smallest box.
Mhm.
And then we go to the social. How are we when we interacting with each other, with everybody else? And then to the intellectual, where are you in terms of growth and everything else? And then we leave the biggest box, which is the spiritual, for last. If I stack those boxes with the smallest box at the bottom and the biggest box at the top, can it stand? It can't stand because it's top heavy. It'll keel over, which is what happens to
Mhm.
all our relationships. But if I turn it upside down and I start with the spiritual, move to the intellectual, then the social, then the physical,
Mm.
it can stand, such that if anything happens to us from a physical standpoint where we can't do what we would normally do for whatever health reason or ailment, then I can move to the social, and we still got the intellectual and the spiritual. But even if the physical and the social, I still have the intellectual and the spiritual. And if should something happen, God forbid, to my intellectual where I can't think no more because of my spiritual commitment, I'm going to take care of you until they put you in the ground.
Mm.
And the reason why we run into what we run into, I believe, is just because we looking to take and never to give.
Mm.
And I think that was my problem the first time around. Because when it hit the fan,
Mhm.
where the intellectual and the social started clashing, now don't get me wrong, the sex was bananas. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And we love it, but it can only get you but so far. Such to the
Mm.
point that when the social and the intellectual started clashing, right? And I'm like, okay, God, and now I'm dipping into my spiritual now, like, okay, Lord, like this is what I'm facing. He told me, like, you're looking for the woman of God, but that's not what you set as your foundation. That's not what you chose. You chose physical. So now that life is happening and you set physical as your foundation, you're realizing now that physical can't do nothing for you, and neither can I, because I didn't ordain that.
Mm.
So what?
Yeah. So I mean,
So
that's good.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So what do I do now?
Absolutely. Wow. So what do you do now? So after 2 years of being married and getting to that awakening that this wasn't going to go any further, and divorce being the decision, how did you feel about making that choice?
I didn't want to. I didn't
Why?
want a divorce because I come from divorce. Like
Mm.
I barely knew who my grandfather was on my mother's. I barely knew the man. Really and truly, I think I may have seen him a handful of times when I was young in elementary school. I'm thinking back to Brooklyn. And it's funny because I didn't live 5 minutes away from the dude, but I barely
Wow.
knew him, right? And then in addition to that, like my whole life, I just seen my grandmother as a single woman. She dedicated her life to Christ. Because here's the truth, marriage ain't for everybody, but neither is singleness. And my grandmother just decided that she didn't need no man in her life. What she did in terms of her ministry was good enough for her, and she was cool with that. So then, of course, my mother and my father get married, and by the time I hit the second grade, they were divorced. And you know what it was, Tanya? I think I tried to outrun divorce. Because I just didn't like the way that it felt. When my parents got divorced, my father had just enlisted in the Air Force. I was in the second grade. We moved to Fort Worth, Texas from Brooklyn, New York. And within a year, we were right back in New York again because of their divorce. And so I would see him during the summer, 2 months out of a 12-month period, which wasn't enough. So I tried to outrun the divorce.
Right.
And I think in me attempting to outrun the divorce, I sold myself short in certain areas, and I was putting up with stuff that I shouldn't have been putting up with. But then, of course, I didn't make the decisions that I needed to make too, all stemming from. But when I finally got to the place where I was just like, okay, I can't continue to live like this, because growth started. I started strengthening my walk with Christ. And then there's no way for you to start strengthening your walk with Christ and growth not be the byproduct.
Right.
And so because
the
dynamics of my mind started changing towards growth and giving and wholeness and uniqueness and separateness, right? Because it started shifting to that place, what we were doing as a couple started to clash. And she wanted to do X, Y, and Z stuff that's not conducive to what I want in terms of an end result, which was growth. And of course, some arguments ensued. Sometimes it got really nasty. Police had to come to the house, and I'm like, okay, I'm the man of God, and I should be a light in the neighborhood in which I'm living in. And I ain't nothing but a bushel putting the lights out. Like I'm representing everything that's, and of course she started becoming vindictive as well and just doing crazy stuff. And one thing led to another. And back then I wanted to blame her, but I realized, no, all of that stuff was a result of your decision-making. And as I became better, here's the funny thing. Just know that if you operate in a bad way, you start making shifts towards growth, you're going to face difficulty and challenge in a way that you've never faced it before. Because you've invested so much of your mind, soul, and spirit in that. And to make that change don't come easy. You know what I'm saying? But you just got to be real intentional and deliberate about it. And when I finally started making the switch, I went through a divorce that felt like forever. I think just the divorce itself and the after effects of the divorce lasted maybe about 12, 13 years. In and out of court, her being vindictive, me getting locked up twice behind this stuff. Like, yeah, Tanya, if we had the time, I'll tell you the whole thing. But, I want to make sure I'm answering your question, though. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's good, because that one decision, I'm not going to say it gave you a lifetime of pain, but it gave you a good part. It gave a good part of your life was in some form of, because you're saying 12, 13 years after the divorce.
Because we had a daughter together.
Right.
And so that was used as the pawn to, I'm telling you, it was a point, Tanya, where I was in and out of Gwinnett County Justice Center. Like it was a revolving door, to the point where the sheriffs who receive you when you come in the door, you got to go through them. They're like, you back again? I'm like, back again.
Yeah, that's a whole different podcast about parent alienation no, seriously, like it really is. These are conversations that need to be talked about as well. However, just knowing the impact of who you choose and how it can really have so much influence even on your life post-divorce, you know what I'm saying? But what I also love in this is that the self-awareness of realizing that, I did make the decision. Not saying that she doesn't have any ownership, but I think what allows you to grow from this is just really understanding, where you were in it too, in terms of choice and how you chose, and how that impacted the person that you married, which also kind of goes into my next question about the core values, because you put in your bio, that your core values was absent, right? And that's so huge. And I know one of the things you talk about a lot, Quest, is that when I tell you, Quest talk about them core values, when I tell you, Quest, I have probably haven't met anybody who talk about core values more than Quest, but I definitely want to know, how did that affect your role as a husband in your first marriage? And also, I think you already kind of answered this. How did it influence your choice of your first spouse?
And my second one. Well, here's what it was in the beginning. And I'm gonna be honest, Tanya. Like, I'm gonna just talk like a man for a minute. It's
Please
some bad chicks
do.
out.
We need
It's some bad chicks out here. I don't know about
okay, so when we
nobody else.
say bad, are we talking about fine bad, or are we
I'm talking
talking
about
about
fine.
like
I'm talking about
okay.
fine. I'm talking about fine. And they come a dime a dozen. It's a ton of them out here. They getting these BBLs and all this other stuff now. Like, I'm just telling you. Like, I mean, I'm a different individual now, so I see things differently.
Right.
Because what I've noticed is that a lot of them are really trying to get what God has in store for them through their way. So they enhancing their breasts and they enhancing they behind, right? Thinking that that's going to attract God's blessing for them or whatever they have. And I'm not saying don't enhance yourself, but it's not an outside job. It's an inside job.
Right.
It's a lot of them doing BBLs, but you don't have the exercise regimen to maintain that. You anything that you do, if you building anything, it has to have foundation. If it don't have foundation, then the word is very clear. There's a man who built his house on the sand and one who built his house on the rock. And when the winds came and the rain fell and the storms blew, the house that was built on the sand came down like a house of cards. Meanwhile, the other one that was built on the rock stood strong through it all. What is your foundation? If you don't got the foundation, I don't care what you building, you're going to build up with one hand and tear down with the next, because you're not the individual that can support all of that. So when I chose my first wife, I chose her because she was fine. I'm talking about built the way that it says, yes, Lord, to me. You know what I'm saying? Right. But what I found out is that when the outside is good, that's nice. But if the inside don't match the outside, if not surpass it, and it ain't in alignment with what you want in terms of an end result, it's guaranteed to fail. And so I could say, like, I didn't, like, the core values was absent. Like, it just wasn't none there. You know what I'm saying? And I was all about smashing no way. You know what I'm saying? I came out of New York. I'm fresh in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? And I don't care what nobody say. Atlanta is the Mecca, honey. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Tanya, Atlanta is the Mecca. It is it's the promised land.
It's so crazy.
You know what I'm saying? That was my mindset back then. And I knew a lot of people. It didn't help that I was in the music business at the time. So I knew a lot of people. Right. And just once again, once you start wanting to grow, and then your mindset is growth and, you know what I'm saying, prosperity, but in a healthy kind of way. Those things kind of die off and you start making this transition that's really rough. But those are the things that caused me to choose my first wife, right? She looked good, smelled good, sex is bananas. But when it comes to making decisions or what can we build together, this is the part where, you ask me, what do you mean compatibility? Because I know now that two people are not just supposed to come together for the purposes of marriage, just because they love one another and they can have children and have a nice home. If I go back to Genesis and I properly do this, right? Because this is a spiritual institution. God said to Adam and Eve, be fruitful, multiply, subdue the earth, have dominion. When I think about that in my mind, it always centers around everything relative to build something together. Right. Is it me? Is it just me? But that's where my mind is. Build something. Be fruitful. And some people will think Be fruitful mean having children, but he said, be
Mhm.
fruitful. Don't be fruitful in your womb. You know what I'm saying?
Correct.
What is the fruit of your mind? You know what I'm saying? What is the fruit of your hands? What are the fruit of your thoughts? What is the fruit of your work? You know what I'm saying? Like there's
That's
many
good.
fruits. Be
Mhm.
fruitful across the board. Be fruitful. Multiply. Take what you have and increase it. Right? Subdue the earth, right? Be in a position where you can call shots not only for you, but for other people as well. And then when you get to that place, the next thing is to have dominion to the point where nobody can say nothing to you. The only person that should be directing your life at that point is God. What next you want me to do? I done been fruitful. I done, you know what I'm saying? Is subdued the earth. I'm having dominion, like for real. What next do you want me to do? But that's the whole purpose behind it. So in other words, I just hear build something together. I couldn't build nothing with her because we weren't thinking along the same lines. We were not compatible. And when you're not compatible, I think, and that's one of the things too, Tanya, I think that people mistake chemistry for compatibility.
Yes,
And so
sir.
I'm gonna say something real unpopular.
That's fine.
Um,
I want to hear.
I, I, I always tell people don't have sex until marriage, please. Because
Mm.
if the booty is good, like you will turn a blind eye to stuff. And the enemy know what he doing too. He wants to keep you distracted so that you don't have time to think and process and weigh your options and make good decisions. So he will throw 36, 24, 38, 40, 42, Jesus. You know what I'm saying? In your way.
Seriously.
So that when you're distracted, all the things that you have in terms of core values and purpose that you're supposed to use to further yourself as an individual, inspire others. Because I'm a firm believer that when you don't operate in your gift, somebody dies, right?
Yeah.
All the things that you would use to have good relationship, to further yourself as a couple, he keeps you distracted so that you never achieve that. But that's
Yeah.
the reason why core values are so important. What are the things that are important to you? Right? And if they're important to you, then you don't compromise them for anyone.
Right. So you have to be willing to suffer. Okay.
You're going to have to be willing to lose friends, to sit in quiet places sometimes. Man, Ty, you know this about your boy. I'm a people person.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like not being around people, but purpose and gifts and God cultivating them will sometimes have to cause you to sit in silence and in dark places where nobody's around. It's just you, your thoughts, and God. And I don't like that place. But what happens on the back end when you are obedient is kind of like the caterpillar who goes into the cocoon. I don't know what that process is like or what the caterpillar feels like. I know that he realizes at one point I was crawling on the floor and on trees, and I went and took a nap. And when I woke up, I was able to soar all over the place, fly all over the place, and do things that I was not able to do when I was crawling on the floor. And that's kind of like what happens when God puts you in that quiet place, if you do it right.
So let me ask you this though, because you were in the music industry. So I'm sure you were exposed to a lot of different women, right? And a lot of just different people. And so get into this core value thing that it sounds great in theory, but it requires a lot of disconnect. It requires walking away, detaching. And so how did you go about discovering what they were for you?
Um, when you're growing, right? Tanya, I think that, and I'll just tell you from my personal experience, I undervalued peace. I undervalued peace.
Yeah.
And I realized that not only is your blessings attached to obedience, but so is your peace. I was like, oh, okay. I get it now. When I'm obedient, God blesses. but there's a feeling that comes along with that man, if I talk about it too much, I might cry on your podcast, like for real.
That's all right.
But I promise you, yeah, it's difficult to describe, like the solitude, the peace that you experience just doing it God's way.
I get it, Quest.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
seriously, like I get it. Like, you go ahead. I get
I'm
it.
with you. Yeah, that's just it. And I wanted more of that. And so sometimes when you may see what we do in life is we declare and we decree. I hate when people be talking about, I'm a manifest. I'm a manifest.
That word
You
is
saying the
gotten
stuff,
very.
but your behavior ain't in alignment with what you're saying. So you want the peace of God, but you still want to tear all these different chicks down while you exposing yourself to their spirit and then wondering why you not getting the stuff. What I've realized though, that there is fact in it. People just doing it wrong. The word declares that death and life is in the power of the tongue, right? And they that love it, which is life, I believe that is, shall eat the fruit thereof, right? So in other words, if I'm declaring and decreeing, Tanya, it's times when my mind is just not in the right place. It's not.
Yeah.
Right? I want to bust a cap. I'm sorry, I know I ain't supposed to say the N-word.
No, hood and holy.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but please don't mix my, like, don't wake up my gangster. I'm trying to lay that joke asleep, right? I saw this lady in church the other day, like she said, I love the Lord, but don't test me. You know what I'm saying?
Shoot, that song by Toby.
You know what I'm saying?
Try Jesus.
Try Jesus. Because I throw hands, like I legit throw hands. And my trigger finger is strong too. And I ain't feared to clap that. You know what I'm saying? But it's in those moments when I start thinking like that.
Yeah.
I am growing spiritually. I am in alignment with abundance. I am mentally calm. Like I have to affirm. Now, what people do is they carry out the action opposite of that. When really and truly, when you start declaring and decreeing those affirmations, what it should do is, if your mind was heading in that direction, which ain't conducive to what you want in terms of an end result, when you declare and decree those things, it should bring your mind back into alignment with those things, such that the decision that you make in terms of action, you got to pull yourself back and say, that is not in alignment with what I'm declaring and decreeing. And so I'm going to stop and I'm going to make sure that I'm thinking, because whatsoever a man thinketh, so is he. Right? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So whatever's in here, it's going to come out through here, some way, somehow, it's going to come out in your members. Right. So I'm like, okay, if y'all going to manifest the right way. If you declare and decree those things, but you move in an opposite direction of those things, your declaring and decreeing is trick.
Right.
So that's the thing that it was for me. Like I had to start bringing that stuff back into alignment. When I say that, all right, cool. Let me start operating in the thing that I want, the thing that I'm saying out of my mouth. It should have that much power where it changes your mind from the direction you're moving in into the thing that's in alignment with what you're saying.
And so you had to start aligning that up for you in your life.
So in other words, I want peace, but I'm at the club and I'm tipsy off the, you know what I'm saying, off the crown, and I'm making bad decisions, but I want peace in my life. No, bro, you don't want peace, because what you're doing is not in alignment with what you're saying. So what did I have to do? If this is the environment that I'm experiencing, the things that I'm doing, guess what I got to do? I got to leave the environment. Can I say it for somebody? Somebody right now who's listening to your podcast, Tanya, is saying they want something different, but they doing the same stuff that they always do. That's always gotten them the result that they get.
That's good, Quest. Like, is that, no, that's good. I love that. And so here you are 2 years after your marriage, you're still, and even though you're legally out of it, there was still a lot of emotions there, just because going to court like that right there is draining. But even in that, you're like, okay, I need to get in alignment. And so as you're getting in alignment, you're working on yourself. One of the things that you did do is that you decided to get married again. eventually, to Faith. Shout out to Faith. Love her. She's amazing. I do. I love her. I want to ask you, what aspects of Quest that you needed to uncover and unlearn to approach your second marriage differently?
I had to become a little bit more structured. I had to let God in. Like, I'm talking about let God in.
Like for real, for real. I know, like, because you know, it sounds so good when you say it. No, I get it. Like for real. Like, yeah, got it.
There are certain places that that I used to frequent that I had to stop frequenting. I had to learn how to slow my sexual activity down.
And this was this is before you married her.
Prior to marrying Faith.
So this was in your single season.
In my single season.
Okay. I just want to I want to really justify that, because I think people misunderstand the singleness season. And I just wanted to kind of like make sure that people understood the importance of that season of your life too.
I'm glad you said it. Glad you said it. It's funny because I've been doing some research on singleness. And what I realize is that people don't have a problem with singleness. People have a problem with being single.
There you go, Dr. Miles Monroe. Listen, that part.
I've been studying that. He's one of the people. He died too early, Tanya.
I'm telling you, man, that man is. Ooh, he left so much on this earth, y'all. But that right there, that was powerful.
So matter of fact, let's go to his work, because there's a tons of stuff that I read, but him in particular, what I learned from him in particular is that there is the meaning of single, like it's not just by yourself. Or I learned from Dr. Miles Monroe that being single, and here's the funny thing, I went and did the work for myself. I looked up every definition of single that I could possibly find, and the synonyms are always the same: separate, unique, and whole. And if you ask me, heavy on the whole. Whole mentally, spiritually, physically, and every other Lee that you can find on the whole, right? And what I found out with people is that people want to be in relationship before they get to the place of being unique, separate, and whole. When I say separate, I don't mean apart from, I mean set apart for.
That's good.
Right? Set apart for relationship. And so people mix up what it means to be alone and to be single. Just because you're single don't mean you got to be alone. Alone, I think, means detached from, isolated from, and without help from. That ain't none of us if you're unmarried. You could be truth be told, you could be married and unsingle, but I think God wants us to be married and single. And I know for some people that's jacking their head up, but once again, if you understand the definition of being unique, separate, and whole, you don't stop being unique. You don't stop being set aside for, and you definitely don't stop being whole once you become married.
Right.
Still an individual. It's just that the two come together in their wholeness to form one. But so many people are getting into relationship without being unique, without being separate, without being whole. And then when you get in a relationship, you tear the relationship up because you haven't achieved a full state of singleness. And that was me the first time I got married. You barely even know what you want. You just know that you want to smash all the doggone time. So you got with somebody who you thought you could achieve that with. And because you got a little game with you, you know what I'm saying? Not realizing that this decision that you're about to make, because you don't have any core values, can legit tear up your life. And it did just that, because I lost 14 years, whatever that time frame was of my life, of time trying to get myself back together that I will never get back. Do you know the development that development can take place in 1 year, much less 14?
Yeah.
You lose 14 to a dumb decision that you made because you're not unique, because you're not separate, and you definitely broken as all get out because you're not whole.
Yeah. And so that uncovering and that unlearning, I know what were some of those? I know you said it was certain things you had certain places you had to stop going to. You had to minimize relations,
Oh,
right? What were some other things you needed to uncover and unlearn?
um, all my weaknesses. I had to get it there. I had to end up getting a therapist because, Tanya, if it's one thing that I understand, it's not the fruit, it's the root.
Whew. All right now.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
good.
Like I always tell, whenever we doing these marriage conferences and stuff, you don't get an apple tree if you planting orange seeds. If you plant
Right.
orange seeds, you're gonna get an orange tree. And so I was like, okay, Lord, I know I need to slow down you know what I'm saying? But I'm still going to Club Kai. I'm still going. Come on, Tanya. You
Listen,
ATM all day, every
you
day.
know
You
I'm
know,
Atlanta, so I get it. I struggle with that old
you know
life
what I'm
too,
saying?
baby. Dugans and give them
Oh,
wings and
come
drink.
on.
Listen, y'all,
Dudley's.
this
Dudley's. Come
listen.
on. Come on. Northern Exposure with Frank Ski. You know what I'm saying? The Velvet Room. You know what I'm saying? Atlanta Live. What else did we have? Club 112. I was
12.
walking out when the sun.
What was it? The 559?
Oh,
Listen.
559 on the West End. Come on. Come on.
Listen, y'all.
Come
I'm
on.
from Atlanta, so that's hey, it's real
Come
out
on.
here. Yeah.
Come on. And so I was fresh out of New York and Atlanta. And it was during the time where people were just fascinated by the way that I talk. Because you know what I'm saying? So like I'll meet girls from the South and they'd be like, talk again. I'll be like, hey, what you want me to say? You know what I'm saying? And so, like for real,
Oh goodness.
we were just really fascinated with each other's cultures. I was blown away by how friendly the women were. Yo, I'm gonna tell you how dangerous the devil is, right? I was blown away by just the Southern hospitality. They like hugging on you, don't know you from nowhere. I'm like, oh, word. And you know what I'm saying? They blown away by, you know what I'm saying? Just the New Yorker in me.
Mm-hmm.
And you thinking like, this dope, right? I realized, Tanya, that there are three distinct characteristics of the enemy: to kill, to steal, and to destroy. And I realize more now than I ever did before that the same game that he ran on Eve is the same game he's running on us today.
Yeah.
Imagine you in this dynamic where they fascinated by you, you fascinated by them, and you think it's a dope environment, but on the back end of it is kill, steal, and destroy. I'm getting involved in these relationships. I'm smashing. Like getting somebody pregnant is the least. Now they got stuff that you keep in like luggage in terms of disease.
Yeah.
And praise God, I never, you know what I'm saying? I walked away from all of that stuff without that. But that last time with faith, so not to get too much off the track, I had to stop going to the club because the club was the environment that facilitated me being in the presence of people that I didn't necessarily, it's a whole bunch of broken people mixing in who looking for love in all the wrong places and the wrong ways.
Yeah.
So I had to stop doing that once again, because we could stop having sex until you go to the club the next time and y'all dancing on each other and all that rubbing and bumping and grinding going on. And before you know it, like, what's up? You coming to my house, I'm going to your house. That's really how it happened.
Yeah.
If I'm keeping it 100. And so you're doing this on a regular basis and you don't even know that you are, like, for real, you're rinsing your spirit out. You're sharing yourself with all of these different people. And so God needed to get me into that place, that dark place, if you will, where he could do what he does best. And so I knew that I had to, through obedience, remove myself away from it.
Wow. That's good. And so what made you say, you know what, she's the one in your second marriage?
So,
Y'all should saw his face.
oh man, let me tell you something. God will always show you the destination or the end result, but he'll never show you the plan.
Right.
If he told me that I would have to go through all of that to get the faith, I'd be like, all right, you're going to keep faith, Gus. Just going to keep her. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Faith was at my house almost every weekend during high school. When I was going out, Faith was just coming into the high school. We both from New York, but our parents had moved to Jersey, right? So we was an hour out of the city. And her parents moved there, my parents moved there, and she was my sister's age, and her and my sister were best friends in high school.
Mm.
Her, my sister, and 2 other girls. So they was at my house every weekend. So if you let me tell the story, like they come through, and we lived in a townhouse where it had first floor, second floor was our bedrooms, and the third floor was the loft, you know what I'm saying, with the skylights in it. So that's where I would hang out most of the time. You know what I'm saying? Because that's where I could, my parents was like, oh yeah, that's his room. He'd be up there all the time. So when you came upstairs, you had to pass my sister's bedroom to go to the loft to take you to stairs that took you upstairs. So every time I would pass my sister's bedroom, I'd be like, hey, what's up, y'all? And me and Faith kind of, yeah, I'm too old for you though, but you know what I'm saying? Like, cause I think she was 14 at the time and I was like 18, right? And so God gave me a glimpse of faith years. In all my wildest dreams, I would have never thought Faith would be my wife. But while I was in Atlanta, she used to come to Atlanta because her aunt used to live there to watch the kids and stuff, spend a couple of weeks out of the summer with them. We connected via Facebook again and started talking. And we had lost touch with each other after high school because I moved back to New York with my grandmother. I moved back to New York. She was still in Jersey, and we would connect every now and then because her and my sister was still tight. But we reconnected. I remember I had already moved to Atlanta, and she, through conversation, Facebook chat or whatever, we decided one day, when you come to Atlanta next, come in, you know what I'm saying? Let's hang out or whatever. And she was like, guys ain't, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, no, really they are. Right. They're not as bad as you. She's like, yeah,
Right.
they do this and they do that. And dot, 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 dot. And by this time I was already in my walk of growth. And I was like, no, that's not necessarily true. I was like, I'm not like that. She's like, you not? And I was like, nope. She's like, you're going to have to prove me wrong then. I was like, all right, cool. My birthday's in a couple of weeks. If you ain't doing nothing, why don't you come to Charlotte? And I'll, take you around or whatever the case may be. She did just that. And from that day on, we've been rocking ever since.
Oh.
I would watch us in our interactions, and I would pray, God, come on. I want to do it again, but I'm scared to do it again because I don't want to go through anything even remotely close to what I went through again. So if she's not what you have for me, then do me a favor. Just go on and move her out the way. Let me do something to piss her off.
Right. I mean, for real. Because I was going to ask you, were you fearful of doing it again, especially with everything you went through? Mm-hmm.
I was fearful, but I didn't let the fear dictate to me what my response was going to be. I knew ultimately, more than fear, I wanted growth. And if I wanted growth, sometimes you're just going to have to face some stuff you don't want to face in order to achieve it. Growth always calls a version of you that you're not yet. If that makes sense. It always requires or calls something from you that you're just not yet. I'm not there yet. Okay, cool. But I'm going to call you and you're going to walk through some stuff. And by the time you walk through this stuff and get to me, you'll be the version of, it always requires a version of you that you currently are not.
Right. That's real.
And so I was like, okay, cool. I'm scared. I'm fearful. But if I'm going to do this, I got to face this. And I did. And it just kept getting sweeter and sweeter. And I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. We slipped up a couple of times and woo. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, for real.
Here's the funny thing though, you got to be careful because even when I was in it, God reminded me like, okay, you won't mess around and turn this into the same. And one day I had to have a conversation with her and she was hot as the devil, right? I was like, we got to stop. She's like, we got to stop. What you mean we got to stop? I was like, we got to stop. Here's why. And I told her, Faith, I love the Lord and I love you. And I want us to be blessed. And if we're going to be blessed, let's do what we need to do to see where this is really going to go. And if it goes to the place where we become husband and wife, honey, we could tear the fan out the ceiling. We could tear the ceiling shirt off the bed. We could bust windows out and scream and holler all we want to. You know what I'm saying? but let's just
Right.
be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want the
Yeah.
blessing more than I want this temporary, you know what I'm saying, climax. So can we, and sure enough, she was like, I don't like it, but I know what you're trying to do. And that was another indication, like, okay, boom. She don't like it, but she gonna do it because she respect what I'm trying to build in terms of, and man, God just kept blessing and blessing Tanya. And before you know it, I was like, here's the funny thing, 52 weeks. She's in Charlotte, I'm in Atlanta. One weekend we go up, the next weekend she come down. The next weekend, I did it for 52 weeks.
Wow.
With the exception of one weekend here and there. But 2
But it
weekends
was
out of the
very
month,
consistent.
oh, it was consistent. 2 weekends out of the month, I was in Charlotte. Another 2 weekends out of that same month, she was here. And we did that for 12 months straight, with the exception of maybe a weekend here and there. But because we were like, this is something good.
Yeah. You was making
And
room for her.
man, I was
Y'all
making
both
room.
were. Both of
We
you
both
all
were.
were. Absolutely.
We both were. We both were. And that was the thing that let me know. Like, and when she wasn't really a Sabbath keeper like that, but she seen the way that I was. And I never pressed her about how I live my life spiritually. She just knew one day when you get a chance, get her on you and let her tell you her side. She knew she wanted a spiritual man because some of the dudes she was dealing with, like the one dude that she was going to marry, my man ended up going to do a drug bid and ended up doing time for it. And she was like, I don't want that for my life.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, she was in New York. What brought her to Charlotte was that Faith used to be the assistant for the CEO of Ally Bank. His wife told him, listen here, partner, go back to the board and tell him you want to move your office back to Charlotte or we going to have problems, because they lived in Charlotte, but his office was in New York. And so he would fly back only on the weekends. She was like, no, you won't. Nope. Bring it back or we're going to have problems. And it just feels like God was moving this whole thing from even without us in the mix. Because he told her, listen, I'm moving to Charlotte. I want to give you an opportunity to move to Charlotte as well so you can continue to be my assistant. I'm going to give you a couple of days to think about it. And she was asking herself, like, really and truly, what's holding me?
Yeah. Wow.
She could tell you some stuff that I really don't want to speak to. Like, she had brought my man's product from one place. I mean, she got it all in a bag, didn't even know what was in the bag, brought it back to his apartment from her place. Cops could have picked her up on the road. She would,
yeah, that could have came out real ugly for her.
Real ugly.
Ooh.
But she knew what she wanted in terms of a man, and she just seen me operating in that space and place. And so I'm saying for some of us in some relationships, once again, for those who may be listening to your podcast, Tanya, who might be thinking to themselves, like, for real, I want to do this, or you feel like you're selling yourself short, be true to yourself, and more importantly, be true to God. You have no idea the blessing that's waiting on you. And like, for real, what he wants for you and what it looks like right now is never the same thing. It always looks like something you don't want. But as long as you're obedient to the will and true to yourself, I promise you, you're going to look back one day and be like, yeah, I'm glad I made that decision.
100%. And so you all are 12 years in, which is a substantial amount of time that you put in this marriage versus your first marriage. What are some tangible things that you and Faith are doing consistently to fireproof your marriage?
We make love daily.
Okay.
We don't make love daily. We make love a daily thing. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Dang, y'all don't get enough. like, no, we make love a daily thing. I want to make sure that you finished asking that question though, because
that was it. I was going to ask, are you speaking in terms of in a physical way, or are you? What do you mean when you say that?
However way we can.
Okay.
And it's funny. This is why I'm telling you, you got to grow as an individual. The way I love and the way Faith love is pretty much opposite of each other.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Faith ain't, I'm a touchy-feely dude. I like to rub. Can I just be 100 with you?
What man doesn't? I mean, I ain't trying to be funny, but I feel like that's it for man's love language. I do. No shade. Ain't no wrong with it. Because that's your wife. You in a covenant. Hey, it's what it is. Yes. But I'm just
but even with my friends, and I love to hug. I just love, You know what I'm saying? But even with the person that I'm with in terms of, you know what I'm saying, doing life together, I love hugs and rubs and, touch a brother. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like that. For Faith, not so much.
Oh,
For Faith, Faith likes to see me cut the hedges.
acts of service.
Faith Faith likes to see me pressure wash the driveway. Faith
I
likes to
feel
see
on
me,
that.
Faith likes to see me mop the floor. Faith likes to see me play with her babies. You know what I'm saying? Faith, those are and you're right, the acts of service. That's what speaks love to her. So I wash her car, I fill it up with gas, I wash clothes, and it's a day. I wash it, and Tanya, I wash all the unmentionables. You know what I'm
He
saying?
said the unmentionables.
The
Okay.
unmentionables. I wash
Absolutely.
all of those, and I fold them up and I put them in their respective drawers. She, she's very organized, so she might switch stuff up from season to season, and I gotta refamiliarize where everything is. But I do all of those things because those are the things that speak love to her. And sometimes I'm like, how come you don't? And it's not that she don't like a good hug. She does. She loves the rubs and all of that stuff because she knows that I'm still fascinated and still turned on by her.
Yeah.
But it doesn't speak the volume of love that I want her to feel. And I want her to feel that. And although it don't make sense to me, who cares? As long as you feel, once again, I'm coming in here to make sure that you get what you need. Because the way that God wired this whole marriage thing to work is that when your cup is full, you're going to look for a way to reciprocate. And the first person that you're going to look to reciprocate to is me.
So, I'm about to say something that,
come on,
because here's the thing.
Come on.
So in what you just said, I can already hear the voices of, well, if you're pouring into her, the automatic assumption is, well, if physical touch isn't her thing, then she's not giving you what you need.
No,
of
here's
course, right?
thing.
And I just want to say that because
it's no, and I'm glad you
see
did.
What I'm saying? Like it's always
yeah.
I wanted to bring that up on purpose. I wanted to.
So it's a number of people in relationship right now who saying, I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z because they ain't doing what I want them to do.
Roll your neck with it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, all that.
You know what I'm saying? We say with attitude.
Mm-hmm.
What I realize is, once again, the principle. Remember the biblical principles. Give, and it shall be. It's not saying it's a possibility of. Granted, let me put this disclaimer on it. Granted that you're in a halfway decent, healthy relationship. Because here's the funny thing. If you married someone who is a taker, then you have to question what put you in position to choose somebody who's a taker. I'm always looking in the mirror. I'm always, who am I as an individual? Am I single or separate? Am I unique? And am I whole? Because those three, when you intertwine them together, really form who you are and how you make your decisions. Whatsoever a man thinketh, so is he. Right? I love the way E always tell me, it's not about what you think you are, but what you think you are. Right? So if I chose somebody who's a taker, it's because there's something in me that caused me to choose that person, and we got to evaluate that. But if we're in a halfway decent, healthy relationship, when I fill your tank and you full, when you full, you looking to share something with somebody. That's just how God wired us, unless you just selfish and you get what selfish people get, right? But if you halfway decent, like you ever been to a restaurant, matter of fact, we done sat down at many a table. You know what I'm saying? And we talked, girl, have you been to such and such? Girl, the food there is unbelievable. The experience that you experienced when you went there in terms of the food was so dope that you had to share it with somebody. It's the same thing in relationship. Our problem is that some of y'all getting in your car expecting to take a 5-hour drive on quarter tank of gas. Try it if you want to. You're going to be on the side of the road. Same thing in relationship. You expect your partner to go the distance and you got them running on fumes? What have you done to pour into them? More importantly, you expecting them to operate in terms of you in a particular way as far as your expectations are concerned, and you haven't even poured into them. That's foolish. Everybody want an ROI, right? Return on investment. How are you going to get a return on something you ain't never invested in?
Right.
And so the reason why faith gives me faith, I don't want people to think that she's not an affectionate individual, because she is. She's just not as affectionate as I am.
And I think that's where I was trying to kind of go with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she cut differently because of her upbringing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that don't take away my love. Here's a funny thing. She did, and here's where men will go, you do it with the boys. And there is some truth to that. Some women, like for real, there's a certain reverence that you hold for your sons that you don't hold for your husband, and that needs to change. I don't got to talk to my wife about that, though, because when I pour into her, and we have discussions from time to time concerning it, healthy discussions.
Right. I love that. That's good.
Here's the point, Tanya. I'll never forget, it was Sunday, if I remember correctly, that our anniversary fell on June 4th. And we were ministering at a quinceañera. And I forgot that June 4th, our anniversary was on the same day. I was like, oh my gosh. She was like, don't worry about it. She was like, we'll plan for us on another day. I was like, man, I love this woman. Right. Someone was like, you doing what on our anniversary? Like you do, like, she was like, no, don't worry about it. Let's go and do what we need to do. And I remember the next day we went out to dinner at a restaurant that we just love to go to. We went, the kids were in school. We spent the whole day together. And on the drive home, like, I just remember asking her, who am I to you in this season? Healthy discussions. Not afraid of the lemon squeeze. Tanya, I asked her, I said, am I the husband that you always thought that I would be in this season? Is there anything that you're missing from me that you need more of? What can I do to make you happier? And some people will think like, oh, you're a sucker. No. It's called investing and making the adjustments, because what worked for me in last season may not necessarily work for me in this season. Her response, Tanya, you dope in this season, Daddy. You taking care of the boys. You support them in all their extracurricular activities. You show up for all the events. We go on vacations. We do stuff in terms of the community. If there's one thing that I would change, she said, I would like for you to plan more. Because she said, when we go away to do what we do, if it's not company related, I do all the planning. And she said, sometimes I'm not mentally there to do it, but I still want to do it though. I said, say less. You know what I did? Got her to give me 12 places here in the state and locally, and then another 12 places outside, restaurants and everything else that you like, that you would like to visit or have not gone to yet. And I'm going to plan for those things just randomly. Why? Because I want to make the adjustments and I want her to feel loved. Because if she's loved, I don't have to worry about what she know what I want already. Many a night she'd be like, come and hug your wife up. I'd be like, I already know what that means. It's going down. It's going down.
But Quest, every woman ain't like that, right? Look at me being look, trying to start something, but
no, they're not.
I'm saying that because that's all. It's a battle, like a gender war out here in these streets, and every time you say something, it's always a response of, well, I did that for so-and-so and it didn't work. And I did this for so-and-so and it didn't work. But it all goes back to what you said, the values and, right. Because it helps you choose. Yeah.
Because see, this works for me and Faith, because I'm finding out who Faith is, what she like and what she don't like. Some people, okay, this is why what God has in store for you is in store for you. I'm just talking about from God's perspective. If
Right.
God takes what something is in store for you, or you take that something that God has for somebody else and you put it in your life, it may not be a blessing no more. It might be a curse now because it's not tailor-made for you. When I do what I do for faith, it's because I'm trying to do what is tailor-made for faith.
Yeah.
So if you take what I'm doing with my wife and your wife ain't that same individual, it's going to be a hot mess. This is the reason why I'm saying conversations daily, because you're saying like what keeps us, it's daily love. It's the choice to choose you daily. Even if we get into I remember one time, Tanya, we used to argue on 10 and I used to be like, this ain't helping nobody. And I would start talking on a 2 and I was committed to remaining on 2 no matter how hot I was, until one day she was like, yeah, I had to start talking on a 2 too, because I'm the only one out here looking crazy, screaming and doing all of this stuff. And you know what I'm saying? And you the only, you know what I'm saying? And
Right. The man. Yeah.
would you know, for the last couple of years, whenever we have a disagreement, it's always at a 2, 3.
Mm.
And the kids are seeing us really, even to the point where we raise our voice, but we may not necessarily be arguing. She'd be like, no, don't fight, because that's not what they used to. Already we
Yeah.
changing the trajectory.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
I'm doing what I'm doing because I want to know who she in particular as my wife is as an individual, and not use a cookie cutter. That fosters intimacy, right? It fosters me getting to know her a little bit more intimate and her getting to know me a little bit more intimate. And that's really at the foundation of why you do what you do, or what I do daily. Daily conversations. How you doing today? I still play with her every day. And you know what I'm saying? I still rub on the booty every day and all of those things that I like to do. It might be more for me than anybody else, to be honest with you. But in addition to that, what can I do for you today?
Yeah.
It's a daily choice.
It's a daily choice.
So if you're doing it once a week, once a month, no wonder you catch a hell, because you ain't trying to make it. You know what I'm saying?
Nah, that's really good. Let me ask you a question, because as a man, what aspects, no, I'm sorry. What is one lesson or belief that men are often taught that affects their perception and treatment of women, do you think?
Vulnerability. As soon as you asked it, it came right to my mind. I realized that y'all love connection. When it comes to your man, you don't want nothing in between you and your man's connection, right? I've learned that. Whatever that connection looks like, it's usually based emotional. Even when it's physical, it's still emotional. Because if something messes with his emotions, it's gonna mess up with his physical, and that might create a wedge, and y'all don't want that. And the funny thing about men is that we don't realize that while we don't have to be vulnerable everywhere, where we do have to be vulnerable is with y'all. And I just encourage women that create a safe place for your man to be vulnerable. Because there's not a lot of places where we can go and be that kind of vulnerable. If you come from a place, like I'm from Brooklyn, New York, like it's not a lot of places you can be vulnerable. And if you do, like for real, that's a big sign to say, come get me. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get got. So we've always been taught to roll with the punches. Don't cry. Never let them see you sweat. Never admit that you wrong. You know what I'm saying? All of those things that we think are man, right? But nobody told us that the things that they told us not to do would be the very thing that we had to do once we got into relationship. And so she's looking for connection, and you can't give her connection because there's a large portion of connection that deals with intimacy and vulnerability. Like vulnerability is a major part of intimacy. And that's what she's looking for, an intimate connection, mentally, intellectually, socially, physically, all those areas, right? Vulnerability allows you to do that. But if you don't know that you have to be vulnerable with her, then it creates a wedge in between. You know how many couples I know right now, Tanya? Like it's a dude I know right now. He is a corrections officer at a penitentiary. I won't say which one because I don't want nobody to, but he's a corrections officer, and it's difficult for him to turn the switch on and off because when he comes home, he has to learn how to be vulnerable after being hardcore the entire day.
Right.
And I'm trying to teach my man strategies right now on how to decompress before he walks into the home so that he can be who he needs. And his wife is like up to her neck right now in terms of like, I've had it, right? I want to connect with him and we're supposed to get married and build this life together, but he can't even talk to me or open up to me about certain things. And I'm like, yep, see, here's a perfect example. And so if you ask me, if there's one thing we can learn to be a little bit more vulnerable with our women, as a matter of fact, once again, I'll reiterate it. You don't got to do it everywhere, but the one that you do in life with and not around, you need to be able to. I remember there were times where Faith, we went on a trip with the kids one day, and I had gotten into a fender bender in the city, and we went to Sesame Place the next day. And I had just been riding myself out, Tanya, about this doggone accident. Like, it wasn't nothing major. We got insurance and everything, but I was riding myself out. And I was talking to Faith about it, and I was vulnerable in that moment. And I told her, like, you know, what I was feeling, what I was going through. And I remember her saying to me, Daddy, get over it. Like, we in Sesame Place, the kids is here, we got insurance. What you worried about? But when she said, get over it, I heard man up. And that's the worst thing you could tell to a man when he being vulnerable with you about a particular thing. Needless to say, not to throw her under the bus, she learned because it was a long time before I came back and was vulnerable again. And I explained to her why. We had a healthy conversation about it. And every time I felt vulnerable again, if we were at home, she would take me upstairs into the bedroom and she would close the door and she would sit in front of me and she would hold my hands and she would use all the body language along with her words to make me feel secure in the fact that this is a safe place for you to be vulnerable now. Say what you need to say, right? You're safe here. You know what I'm saying? And so if you want to foster, right, or to your question that you asked, if it's one thing that we can learn to do as men and do better at it in order to facilitate that, is learn how to be vulnerable.
That's good. What do you wish women knew and truly understood about men and their emotions? I asked this question last week with another gentleman on the podcast. I'm asking every man on here because I need to, it's just I'm curious.
I want women to understand that we're not robots. We have feelings and we have thoughts and we want to be heard. And if we're not sharing what we're thinking and feeling, it's not because we're trying to be rockheads. It's because we don't feel safe. Yep.
That's good. That's good. And I know we're, kind of pressed for time, but I do have this question because I know that I do have men who listen to the podcast, and I think this question can go either way, but I definitely want to make sure that we talk to the men because
for sure.
That's important. I feel like it just gets lost in a lot of conversation. For those who say, I would never get married again. What would you tell them? And then for the women, in terms of what should they look for in getting married again?
For either side.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, we can't talk about either side on this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for both sides, it's the same thing. It goes back to Dr. Miles Monroe's theory. And that is, who are you as an individual? Have you reached the full state of singleness? And if you haven't, please don't get into nobody else's relationship. Because here's the funny thing. We think, I hate when people say time heals all wounds, because it doesn't. It does not. It does not. Here's proof of the fact. When you go to the club and you see that, saying somebody my age in the club, what are you doing in here? You 60 something, you 50 something, ain't nobody in this club over 30. What are you doing in here? Right? Which is proof of the fact that something can happen to you at 5 years old. You never get it addressed. You never get the help for it or the therapy for it. It turns into 15 to 19, 23, 27, 32, 39, 41,
Yeah.
55, 60. And every time that situation comes up, you respond the same way. And you were a 60-year-old man still dealing with 5-year-old issues because you never got the healing or never got the help that you needed. So before you even consider marriage or relationship again, because if you do, you what you don't heal from, you repeat. Right. And so one of the things that I did, even with me and my daughter and the divorce, like we sat in therapy and we had to deal with some stuff. Ooh, Tanya. That's a whole nother podcast altogether. We had to deal with some stuff. Before I married Faith, I wanted to make sure that I was a halfway decent healed individual because I didn't want to carry anything from my past into this new relationship. Because all I was going to do is repeat it and then damage somebody else's life. No wonder why the second marriage divorce rates are higher the second time around, because people didn't learn from what happened the first time. But yeah, to your point, become unique, become separate, and more importantly, become whole. Until you achieve that, don't go back to nobody else's relationship.
Any final words?
From shaky to good, from good to great. Ultimately, what we want is phenomenal marriages, phenomenal relationships, phenomenal life.
Yeah.
But phenomenal don't just happen. It takes work. Do the work and you'll get phenomenal. Plain and simple.
Oh, man, I love that. Quince, I could talk to you all day. I tell you, when we get in a room, y'all, we really do talk like this. Like we talk for hours on end, all of us. It's
all of us.
I'm grateful to have some amazing friends. I know, Quest, you just finished your book.
I did.
Called Quest for Faith, right?
Oh, come on. The journey to experience the phenomenal marriage that you deserve.
I love it. I love it. And so that book, you all need to get that book, and I'm gonna put all that stuff in the show notes. So you all can get the book, because that book has a lot of principles and strategies to.
Shouts out to Jasmine Womack for helping me get it done too, man.
Yes.
Shouts out to Coach.
I know. Love Jasmine. I love Jasmine. Shout out to her. She is an amazing person. And we're definitely going to put that in there for you all to get his book. I think it's so important to, whatever it is that you want, is preparation, right? And I think the book will be, beneficial for those. And because I think sometimes we do a lot of withholding of what we really want due to what has occurred in the past. And I know some people who are listening in different seasons, and you might be in a season where you're like, you know what, Tanya, that's not what I want right now. And I'm going to tell you, I think that's a very good, intelligent decision to make, because there's a lot of pressure to do it again. And I think depending on where you are, that just may not be your focus. Your focus needs to be your singlehood. Oof. When you agree?
What?
Seriously. Like, I promise you, and I think I'm gonna have to do a whole podcast on it. I'm glad I never got remarried again at the time that I thought I should have.
Come on.
Right. And so when I tell you it's cool, like, this isn't a pressure for people to do it. This is for people to understand that one thing, yes, there's a great thing to have statistical data, but we don't want to take this data and make it so concrete where, well, I don't want to do this again. I just don't want people to live in fear due to divorce. Divorce can plant a lot of fear in you in ways that you don't even think it does. And so I wanted to bring Quest on to just bring a healthier perspective to it, because you don't hear a lot. So, I bring people on like you and Glenn, who's done this, right? I had him and his wife, and she was married twice before she married him. So But here's the thing, it was still saying, hey, I'm going to not allow what happened impact, what could be. And so that's why I wanted to bring you on, because I wanted to talk about it from solely a man's perspective on really doing it again. And so, Quest, I appreciate you doing this at the last minute.
No, you good.
I was doing this at the reaching
It's
out.
not a lot of people I would do this for, but you know what I'm saying? Like, for real, I already knew that this was going to be a dope conversation.
Absolutely. I had to have Quest. I was like, I got to bring Quest on to have this discussion. And Quest, I know that this will be a blessing for anybody who's listening. And I really appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
All right. Well, you take care. We'll talk soon.
All right.
All right.
Peace.